Zona on the beat.
Be the reason that you win. Be the reason that you hit. Be the reason that you blow up. Be the reason that they show up. Be the reason. 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 Be the reason.
Promise you that I'ma be the reason. Know I'm ballin' on in and off season. On the fadeaway, I swear it never fades away. Cause you know I stack that paper for a rainy day.
Be the reason. Be the reason.
Welcome back to Be the Reason Conversations with Coach Keaton. I am Coach Teddy Keaton, head football coach and lifelong learner. When I think about where it all started for me, not just as a coach, but as a man, I think about Stillman College. That's where I was a student, where I launched and hauled gear as the equipment guy, where I learned the game as an assistant, where eventually I got the call to lead as a head coach. Every level taught me something new, not just about football, but about humility, growth, and being ready when the moment finds you. Today, I want to take you back to those days and share how chasing opportunity, not money, shaped everything that came after.
All right, Coach Keaton, so we're taking it back to Stillman College. You were a student there, correct?
Correct.
Can you talk to us about your undergraduate experience at Stillman? Can you remember your first day? What did you study?
Well, my first day at Stillman College was a blessing. When I first got there, it hadn't been, I thought my mother was dropping me off at a mental institution. It was just not what you see on a regular day basis of a college. But when I got there, the people was just so warm. There's so many people that impact my life, from financial aid to admissions, Mr. Mason Bonner to be exact, Ms. Hughes. Those kind of people I met when I got on campus, and they kind of took me under their wings and they raised me. I met my lifelong best friend there named Renard Williams. My other best friend, George Carter. I met those guys on the campus of Stillman. So when I got there, we all was, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, trying to enjoy the moments and the experiences that college had in store for us. I enjoyed it. Most people don't know this, a little well-known secret. My first year in college, I basically almost flunked out. I had a GPA of about a 0.25. I couldn't even buy a Pepsi with my GPA. It was simply because I was not focused and not disciplined, because that was my first time being away from home, I had got with, some people, and they wanted to party, I wanted to party. But I learned a lot of lessons in that failure. That failure that I had, it honestly caused me to go home, and I was kicked out of school for a semester. So I went home, and when I went back home, my dad works as a foreman in the steel mill. He took me to the steel mill. The steel mill by that time had, the belts and stuff, conveyor belts that kind of did things. It was almost like an assembly line. My father turned the assembly line off for me and made me hand dip the cores and different things of that. If it was 100 outside and it's 200 in the steel mill. So my whole summer was based off, my spring semester and that summer was based off nothing but hard work. And it was all to prove a lesson to me that I learned the most valuable lesson, that every time I got paid, I get off, we work 12 hours. So if you go in at 2, you got off at 2. So when I went in at 2 o'clock in the morning and we didn't get off to 2 o'clock in the evening, I would go home and I'm dirt tired because I had never worked at that magnitude ever in my life. So when I got home and I'm trying to kick my boots off and rest a little bit, my father would be like, "Oh no, we got to cut the grass." What do you mean? I've already worked 12 hours a day. What do you mean I got to cut grass? So during those lessons, he took all my paycheck and he'd be like, "No, I get my check." And it was a lot of money because I had never worked 12-hour shifts. You're talking about a nice check for a guy who's 18, 19 years old. He took my check and he was keeping it. And he was like, "Oh, you got to pay the rent? The light bill got to be paid? All this, you just can't stay here for free." I was learning life lessons during that time. So by the time I got back to school and it was time for me, the summer was over, and I had got readmitted back into Stillman, boy, I went back to school and I had a different mindset. Because my father told me before I left, he said, "Do you want to be doing this for the rest of your life? Because this is where you're headed if you can't get focused on what it is that you're here to do." So when I went back to college, I made A's and B's for the rest of the time I was in school. He knew I was very well capable of it. I just went there and I didn't have the right mindset when I went on my first run.
Okay, so let's take a step back for 1 second. Where is home?
Home is Bruton, Alabama.
Where is Stillman College again?
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Talk to us about at that time that transition, if there was a major one from Bruton, Alabama to Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Major transition. You're talking about, I graduated from WSDL High School in Bruton, Alabama, where there's about 80 to 90 kids in your class, and it was only about 12 of us that were African American. I had been around Caucasian people for a long time and pretty much raised in the Caucasian way. And to make the transition from being around and having white friends and doing a lot of things to go to Stillman College, which is a historical black university, I get there and it was a culture shock for me. I had never really been around that many African American people from different walks of life. We're talking about all the way from New York to California to Florida. They were all different spaces, and just navigating and learning who they were. You're talking about Bruton, who was a small, slow-paced town where you knew everybody. You went to high school with most of those, everybody you went to elementary school, other than somebody who may have left, mom transitioned, got a new job, or dad did. Most of those cats, we've been together since elementary school all the way up until we got to high school, and going somewhere where I'm the only boy from Bruton. I don't know anyone. I'm trying to learn new people, and luckily I connected with my best friend Bernard Williams, who dad was the housing director, and he kind of took me under his wings, and we kind of rocked together our whole time when we were in college. And then George Carter was a guy who was in my he was from Atmore, which was a city that's right over. We're in the same county from Bruton, so we kind of had a similar background. So we kind of connected with each other, not just about, we were different people, but we connected because of our commonality of the Escambia County, which was a good thing because those guys kind of helped navigate me through and get me where I needed to go, and made me feel like I had a friend. And my personality was very charming and always was good with people, so it didn't take me long to make more friends outside of that. But I got a group of friends that I consider my friends, and Renard Williams, George Carter, Bashir at Anwar, and then, we joined social groups. And when we got into all that, it kind of made life easy for us.
So, like class superlatives, like class clown, best smile, those types of superlatives. What do you think your classmates at Stillman would label you?
An overachiever, a guy who, they laughed at me when I told them I was going to be the manager. They used to make fun of me. Bashir and Anwar, who live in Atlanta right now, they talked about me so bad every time I was on. You're just the manager. You're not a coach. Why are you going? You're not. And they used to watch me carry my notebook around, and I drew up plays. I played the video game constantly, and at that time it was just college football, and we would, in between classes, I would just go to the room and I basically would play the video game. I really wasn't a social butterfly until possibly my second semester in school. That's when I really became a social butterfly, because by that time I had joined this organization called B5B, and when I joined B5B, it kind of gave me another group of friends to be a part of. So I'm an overachiever. I just done some things that people thought that wasn't capable to be done.
Okay, that's a good segue into the next topic I want to bring up. So at some point during your journey at Stillman, you started letting people know you want to get more involved with football, and that first step towards that on that campus was as equipment manager.
That's correct.
How did that happen?
Well, like we was in the room with Bashir, Anwar, and Chris Jones and those guys, and I told them I wanted to be the equipment manager. I mean, I wanted to be a football coach, not the equipment manager. And they laughed, and just like everybody else would. And I thought it was, funny myself, but I was in her English class, Miss Danzy, Eula Danzy, God rest her soul. I told Eula I wanted to meet her husband when they announced him as the coach. And she said, well, he's no longer my husband, but I do have a relationship with him, and we'll see what we can do. So she called him up, and he knew I was coming, but he would never be there at the time that I would always be free. So one day I decided I was going to skip class all day. He had to come at some point in time. So what I later found out, that there was a back door that led into the building, that he would not come through the front door, and he would go around the back door, and he would be in his office, and he would be there all day, and then he'll sneak back out that door, and I never knew he was there. Then I figured out what he drove, and I stood by his car. So after standing by his car, he finally bumped into, and as I said in episode 1, he offered me a job to cut grass. And I did the grass cutting, and obviously I did a good job with that. And he said, I can't hire you as a coach because you don't have any coaching experience, but I can let you be a part of the equipment staff. So I met with Charlie Porter, who's another big influence on my life, and Charlie kind of led me along the way, and I did what I had to do.
What were some of those duties that you had to do as an equipment manager?
Lord, it was everything. But one of the most important duties that I had, that he gave to me, that I think started shaping me as a coach, is before there was a director of football operations that was really a popular position, he let me become the director of football operations, meaning that I would check his emails, I would respond, I would call kids. When kids came on visits, it was my job to go respond to them. When practice started, it was my job to take roll. If somebody was missing, I had to go to the residence halls and go pick those guys up and get them where they needed to be. If they got in trouble and he wanted to see them, I had to make sure that happened. And I became this guy called his man Friday. I would go to the cafeteria, I would get his lunch for him, pick it up, make sure he had everything that he needed during the day. I toted his bags when we went on trips. I washed clothes. I watered the field. I made sure the field got painted. I made sure the practice field was set up to the level that it needed to be set up. And before I looked up, I had about 18 jobs, and none of them really was coaching football. But I'll tell you in later episode how those job set up, that the vision that Coach Danzy had, shaped me to be who I am today, and why I'm probably as successful as I am today with coaching football.
Okay, so before we go into what you just mentioned, take us back to the moment where you snuck into a coach's meeting where you were supposed to be in the laundry room. What was it about that day, or if you can remember, what in your mind that day made you decide to just go for it?
I wanted to learn ball. I knew that the only way I could get it, so I would rush and wash the clothes as fast as I can. When they got out of practice, instead of running to the cafeteria, I knew they had meeting right after the cafeteria. So I would try to get everything in the washing machine as much as I could, and then I would get the washer going, and I knew they met on campus, so they had some of the classrooms up on the yard. So I would run up on the yard and try to go and sneak into the offensive staff meeting. At that time, the coordinator was Jim Green. So when Jim Green was coordinator, I would go in the back, they'd be watching tape, they'd draw the plays up on the board, and here I'm in the back with my little notebook pad, and we just writing it down, trying to learn it, trying to learn everything, and trying to show them that I was dedicated to the point that I really wanted to coach ball, but I still could handle my work as doing the laundry. So I would leave there as soon. Instead of going to eat, I would run back and put the clothes in the dryer, make sure everything's done. And sometimes I was in the locker room till 1 o'clock in the morning because, it wasn't during that time in 99. They didn't have the big industrial washing machines because we was a new starting program. We had your household washing machines. So it was only so many pair of clothes that you could put in that washing machine. And it was probably 12 to 15 at a time. So you're talking about 100 players. That's going to take 4-5 hours just to wash clothes.
Walk us through I'm assuming one time you got kicked out. Did that happen multiple times when you got caught in the meeting? Walk us through one of those moments, and then let us know how did you let that moment, getting kicked out of a place where you wanted to be, how did you keep going on despite the fact that you were kicked out, pushed aside, because that's just not where you were supposed to be at that moment? How did you keep going?
By that time, Jim Green had left. And Terrell Stewart, who is one of my good friends, a guy I took everywhere with me, who coached with me a lot of places, I love him to death. He had took over. He was the wide receiver coach, so he had took over as the offensive coordinator. And again, nobody looked at me as a coach. They always looked at me as the equipment manager. So I was in the back of the room, and Terrell was a little bit different than Coach Jim was. Jim Green was more of a teacher, or more of a nurturer. He was a person that cared about the fact that I cared about the craft that he loved. Coach Stu was more of a players coach. The players loved him. He loved the players. They kind of played around. So one day I was in the meeting, and one of the players started joning me. Why is you in the meeting? You supposed to be washing. Ain't you got the clothes or something to wash? And this and then. So Coach Stu, I don't think he did it intentionally. He was like, man, you're messing up my meeting. You got to get out of my meeting. Go do your job. Get out of my meeting. And so I left, and I felt some type of way. It was just only drove me to be more passionate about what I wanted to do. So the very next semester, Melvin Pete came. And I could write a book about Melvin Pete. Melvin Pete Jr. is the reason why I'm probably more of an offensive genius that I am today. I shouldn't use the word genius. I should say juggernaut. I just kind of, a lot of my concepts and philosophies came from him because he was a true teacher of the game, and he met a lot with his quarterbacks and spent a lot of time teaching whatever concepts and learning coverages and learning different things that we possibly didn't learn as much under the previous regime. Not saying that they were not good coaches, they just wasn't Melvin Pete. So as time went along, they just kind of adapted and kind of let me slide in. And one day I got embarrassed. I said something to the quarterback while I was at practice, and I'm really just supposed to be there to spot the ball, but I'm there coaching as well because I wanted to coach. And I told the quarterback, I said, why you ain't throw the 7 route? You should have threw the 7 route. And he said, well, what coverage was they in? And I was embarrassed because I couldn't tell him what coverage he was in, but I knew the flag route was open. And he says, cover 2. So you need to learn your playbook. And if you learn your playbook, maybe somebody listens to me. So from that point on, I knew that talking to players, especially college players, and they know you didn't play the game or you wasn't recognized on the staff as a coach, you shouldn't be saying anything to those players, because when they barked back, there was nothing I could say because I was dead wrong, and I was wrong about I didn't know what the coverage was. So you shouldn't speak if you don't know.
Okay. So some of the other roles that you have taken up at Stillman were assistant coach and DFO, special teams coordinator, recruiting coordinator, and running backs coach over time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Walk us through your ascension from equipment manager, finally getting into the staff and then obtaining multiple roles on the staff at Stillman College.
Well, the biggest thing that I can say in that transition was I was still begging Coach Danzy to let me coach. So Coach Stinson is the reason why I got to coach. Albert Stinson was the special teams coach. He was the O-line coach at that time as well. So what Coach Stinson, he knew I wanted to be a coach. He was a state trooper, and he used to say, I tell you what, Ted, I need some help with the special teams. I'm going to teach you how to coach special teams. We're going to be in the meeting and we're going to learn. So I got the chance to start coaching the front line of the special teams on the punt team, organizing kickoff return, all under Coach Stinson's tutelage. I really enjoyed that process because somebody took the time with me to help me learn. Now, remind you, I was already the DFO. Didn't know I was the DFO, but I was the DFO. I handled all the business, arranged all the travel with Miss Tiffany and the AD, Dr. Richard Cosby. Those guys kind of helped me shape who I was and what I was becoming. And I was so ecstatic about coaching special teams. By the time the middle of that year, our running backs coach got a high school job doing something. So I went into the office and I begged Coach Danzy and Coach Pete, could I possibly coach the running backs? And by chance, they let me coach the running backs, and that was a growing pain within itself. I learned, I had to learn what the offensive line do. I had to learn how the blocking schemes went together. And Coach Pete was very strict to the point that you couldn't say nothing unless you knew what you was talking about. I could even remember a time when I was coaching the running backs and I told one of the running backs to go a certain way, and I didn't know that they could tag the running back on the tags or where they were supposed to go. And I told him to do a swing route when he was supposed to have an arrow route. And so Coach Pete asked the running back coach, well, who told you to go that way? And the running back said, Coach Teddy. They never called me Coach Keaton. They always called me Coach Teddy. Coach Teddy told me to go that way. And I hadn't been studying my playbook like I was supposed to be studying. So every week they installed plays and did things. So Coach Pete took the football and he hit me in the back of the head with it and told me to learn my playbook. And at that time, I didn't understand how important it was to the big picture for you to understand what to do, how to do it, and why it's important to do it that way, and how significant your role was in the organization as the running back coach from a blocking standpoint, from a running standpoint, from a passing standpoint, and why it's important for me to know everything. And from that point on, I took coaching running backs very serious, and it kind of just platooned from there.
Can you recall, once you finally made it to the staff of the Stillman College football team, can you recall what was your most challenging moment on that staff? How did you overcome it?
Getting the players and the coaches to respect me as a coach. A lot of them saw me, and because I had took on this favor with Coach Danzy, and he believed in me and gave me some opportunities that some people felt I didn't deserve, but I had worked for those opportunities, and he let me make decisions at times that some of the older coaches who've been coaching for a long time felt that they should have had that right to do. And I'll give you an instance when we were in a game and it was 4th down, and he would ask me, hey, Ted, you want to go for it or you want to kick it? And I'll be like, we're going to kick it. And I think some people felt that that wasn't a decision I should have been making. Maybe, the coordinator should have been able to have the say in that. But at that time, he was teaching me game management. So he would always ask me, why did I choose to do this? And the first couple times he asked me that, I really wouldn't be able to answer that question for him. But as I got older, I understood that field positioning was a big part of the game. So in certain areas of the field, you needed to know that we needed to go for this, or what the score was, or did we need to get points out of this drive, or could a punt pin them deep enough that we could, our defense was playing well, and watching the flow of the game, just keeping up with the flow of the game was important as a coach, as a head coach. So I was learning how to be a head coach through the DFO work and through the decision making and the thought process of a head coach. So that was real time learning, and I wasn't getting paid a dime to do none of that.
Okay. And as you've mentioned before, you are currently the head football coach at Clark Atlanta University.
That's correct.
So is there anything in your past, how long have you been a coach there?
This is my first year at CAU.
In the past year of you as the head football coach, is there anything that you understand now as a head coach that was difficult for you to understand when you were on the Stillman College football staff?
I think it gave me an appreciation, because when you start from the bottom, like I did, when you're the equipment manager, you understand that things happen in the equipment room that's out of their control, that now if you've never worked in there, you don't understand that why the clothes are not ready to go for practice, or why this happened, or this, and this. There's a lot of things that go on that transpire. So I've learned to appreciate the programs that I've inherited and the programs that I've coached, to organize them, to understand what happens at the bottom affects everything that happens at the top. But I also have enough appreciation not to go down and cuss everybody out because a situation happened. We're going to find a solution and try to figure out how we're going to move forward with it.
Does your experience on the Stillman College football staff, is there anything in particular from that experience that feeds or supports your experience now at CAU?
Yes, the biggest thing I learned from Stillman was organization. Remember, Stillman was a brand new startup program, so we were learning how to put a team together. I think that's where I learned all my recruiting skills. Back in those days, you had to drive in the car. You had to be able to read a map. Nowadays, you go on your phone, you Google it, you know where it's at, you know what everything is rolling. So it's kind of like over the time, we kind of learned how to organize a board, learning how to put the players where they needed to be. I kind of learned how to be a GM, learning how to making sure they get through the process of financial aid, making sure the housing process went well, making sure the meal plans were taken care of, the residence hall. It was a really great experience because I got to learn that firsthand. And a lot of coaches don't come with that type of experience, that they understand the process from start to finish. That's getting the class, getting them from the recruitment process to in the seat in the classroom. That's what I excelled at. And I learned that that was the most important piece of being a head coach, which we all think that it's about the X's and O's, but it's truly about the process of getting them where they needed to be and going in folks' home, being able to talk to them and being able to recruit a kid to a place. That's where I honed a lot of my skills, to be able to go in and sit with a family and be able to have a conversation and talk about financial aid. And those conversations are very uncomfortable, especially when you're 19, 20 years old. That's an uncomfortable conversation to be talking finances with someone, but I kind of learned as I went along, which prepared me for every other job that I went to.
Okay. So as you were talking through your experience at Stillman, you mentioned that there were a few head coaches that you had to serve under. What impact did they make? Did any one of those particular coaches make on you interpersonally? So not football skill, football acumen, anything like that. Out of any of those coaches, um, which one of them would you say had an impact on you personally, internally?
Well, Coach Danzig was the most impactful. Jim Green, Albert Stinson, Dexter Hood. Mind you, I wasn't getting paid. Um, I remember my phone was about to get cut off, and I did not have the money. And Dexter Hood, who was the strength and conditioning coach, D-line coach at that time, he slid me $400 to pay my phone bill. And it was the most grateful thing I had saw somebody do. But he believed in me. I never paid him those $400 back to this day. But I'm grateful for him because he was a guy that helped me along the way. Coach Porter, the wisdom that he carried. These guys were in their 60s and 70s at that time when I met them. They played an impact. Melvin Pete, and all these guys are big fans of mine now. We still communicate to the day, the ones that are living. They're still a part of my life and a part of my journey. They're one of my biggest fans. When I move, they call, they congratulate. When I win a big game, I get a text. Coach Green is probably the second most impactful person that had an impact to me because he gave me the title DFO. I looked at it as they making me do all the hard work and everybody else kind of around here chilling. I got to get rosters together. I got to get this. And I'm talking about I'm the last person to get on the bus. I got to tote the man bags up to his room. And I got to make sure everything's set up for the meetings at nighttime. So I always I was looking at it the wrong way. But what I was really learning is to be a servant leader and learning how these things supposed to run. And I think that when I had those moments where I would sit on the back of the trailer, because we were in a trailer at that time, and I used to go on the back stairs and I would cry because Coach Danzig might have just laid into me because I made a mistake on a piece of paperwork that the roster had a wrong name, or a name was misspelled, or his number was wrong on there, and he would throw it back to me and say, "Why you hitting me this incomplete ass stuff?" And I kind of would take it, I've never been fussed at to that magnitude. So I would sit on the back porch and cry, and Coach Green would come around and say, "This all gonna pay off for you one day." And what he's doing is trying to make sure you're tough. And I developed tough skin at that time. So I wasn't thin-skinned, so you could say whatever. So by the time I got in what they call the real world, where there was nobody around that knew me, nobody was around to comfort me, and when I led and went somewhere else, it became a little bit more easier for me to get chewed out by somebody because I had been through that storm at Stillman College in that time.
So while, as you kind of just mentioned how they taught you how to process like obstacles, difficulty, and whatever was going on with the staff, How did your experiences there teach you how to process a loss?
I didn't learn that there.
Okay.
Coach Danzig won a lot,
Okay.
but any loss that we did get, I'm a sore loser. Remember, I said in my earlier episodes that I refused to lose. So everything about me was a winner. And I wanted to win, so it never was easy. And I can honestly say to this day, it's still not easy to lose. I'm never going to accept the loss as a loss. I'm going to always try to figure out what can we do differently that loss or that reoccurrence doesn't happen. And I think what it did is it taught me preparation helps you with that. But even if you prepare to the fullest, it ain't about what I know. It's how much my players know and can execute. So Coach Danzig had a phrase that I coined that you don't win ball games with X's and O's, you win with Jibbies and Joes. So he let me understood that coaching football was about recruitment, especially if you were going to coach at the collegiate level. Now looking back on all of that, from cleaning jerseys to calling plays, there's one thing I've learned that I wish more people understood early on. I never chased a paycheck. I chased opportunity. The money came, but the lessons, the relationships, the growth, that came from saying yes to the grind, from being present, and from trusting the process. So in this next part, I want to break that down a bit more. Why chasing opportunity can take you further than chasing money ever could.
So, I know you touched on this a little bit before, but again, you just came off of saying chasing opportunities can take you further than chasing money ever could. Why is that?
Well, in 1999 to 2004, life was a lot easier than today's time is. But understand, what are you willing to give up to be successful? You're going to start from the bottom in every organization that you get in. Even if you started your own business as an entrepreneur or whatever you're doing, you're not going to get the money first. It's got to be a lot of hard work and a lot of grind. What are you going to sacrifice? What are you willing to give up? So I asked myself that. I wanted to be a coach that bad that I was willing to sacrifice the opportunity. I wanted to take the opportunity because I knew that if you understand the business that you're in, you understand that if I'm going to get somewhere, I got to start somewhere. So that was my opportunity. I could not allow that opportunity to not, oh, you got to pay me a certain amount of money. I'm not going to do it. Well, obviously, I wouldn't be sitting here today if I would have had that type of attitude. So the attitude that I tried to possess was, I'm going to look at this opportunity, build some relationships, hopefully it'll get me in the door and gain some experience in what I'm trying to accomplish. And I was going to segue into coaching high school football or possibly, teaching school because that's what my degree was in. So I wanted to make sure that I could align that when I interviewed with a principal, that they understood that I had a little bit of football experience, and especially having college experience would allow me the opportunity to become a head coach at a high school a lot faster than I would have to do if I didn't have any experience.
You just alluded to this a bit as you were just speaking. Money moves differently now than it did when you were having these experiences from 1999 to 2004. How does that advice translate to the world we live in right now?
I think it still translates. You still gonna have to start somewhere. That's what internships are about. That's why people go and do internships, because your passion will drive you. If you ain't passionate about it, no, you're not. You always going to be thinking about what the paycheck going to look like. I think that's a poverty mentality. And I had to learn that a long time ago, that if you got a poverty mentality and all you chasing is money and not opportunity, you will never be satisfied with the work, because what you're really looking for is the payday that comes with that work. I was blessed. The relationships that I made at Stillman still resonate to this day. I'm talking about from faculty to staff to presidents to everybody else that's involved with the Stillman College, family. I'm still involved with a lot of those people to this day. So I think those relationships helped carried on and helped me build relationships in other places. And I tell people in this business, it's not about what you know or who you know. It's about who you know and who's willing to speak up and give you an opportunity when that time comes, or represent your name in the way you want it to be represented in.
Okay, With that being said, how can someone follow this advice but catch themselves from being taken advantage of for free work?
You got to know when your point is, when it's enough. I think that as a person, you got to know, what am I getting out of this? What is happening for me? How am I growing in this? And like I said, a lot of times people don't realize that at one point in time, I really thought that Coach Danzy was taking extreme advantage. I'm doing all your work. You're getting paid the check for it, but I'm not getting paid the check. I'm doing everything. I'm toting the bags, I'm washing, cleaning, everything else. But what I learned is this. A person that knows how to do the job will always have a job. The person that knows that why that job has to be done will always be the boss. So in that particular moment in space in my time, I was learning how to do the job so that I always could get a job, but I was learning why that job had to be done so I could eventually become the boss. I didn't know at the time, but every role I played at Stillman as a student, as an assistant, even the equipment manager was preparing me for something bigger. If I had been chasing a check, I would have missed it. But because I chased the opportunity, I grew, I learned, I built something real. And that's the message I want to leave with you today. Don't chase money. Chase the moments that stretch you, shape you, and set you up for your purpose. If this spoke to you, pass it on to someone else who's also head down on their grind right now. Subscribe, follow, stay tapped in, because next time I'm sharing the most vulnerable moments of my career, but ended up being the most rewarding. As always, be the reason.
Then I teach it to the fan. Little black boy growing to the man.
Be the reason that you win. Be the reason that you hit. Be the reason that you blow up. Be the reason that they show up. Be the reason. 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 Be the reason.